Welcome back to the news. All right, this is not the usual Saturday slot because actually things are going on. I kind of just had to bring you these stories as soon as they dropped because they're honestly really bloody interesting. Things are moving and shaking within World of Warcraft faster than normal, that is for sure. And it's mostly for the best. But I think one thing's really clear to me, and that is that with Dragonflight being out and Blizzard even admitting that they didn't really get the sales that they wanted, even though, I do think it's a brilliant expansion, their back is against the wall, right? Their back's against the wall, and I think that means
they're getting more scrappy, they're getting more gutsy, and that takes me to today's sponsor.
Nord Threat Protection. So, phishing attacks where like a scammer tries to dupe you into compromising your safety by using, say, a fake email with a bad link. Well, NordVPN Threat Detection can recognize malicious sites and warn you before anything goes wrong. Plus, a whole bunch more.
So hit up nordsecurity.com/Bellular to get the best deal possible.
Threat protection will stop trackers from following you around. It'll stop ads before they load, a more future-proofed proper system than extensions that keep on getting killed, which will of course make your internet faster, smoother, and safer. It'll block malware by scanning what you download and deleting it immediately if it detects a threat. The same goes for malicious websites, like if you've been tricked into clicking a bad link. So just sign up, download the app, log in, and use the internet with confidence that you have got that other layer of protection active. You will always get the best deal from my creator link,
which is nordsecurity.com/Bellular. And that brings me straight into our first story. And that is a major annoyance being worked on through a sort of temporary thing. I wonder if this will happen differently in the future. But time walking with the Turbulent Timeways event, because for 6 weeks starting next Tuesday, time walking is going to be up every single week and with bonus rewards. On the 28th, Kata Time Walking will start, and of course the usual quest to do 5 dungeons will be there, but it will be upgraded to award you a heroic level raid item instead of a normal level one. And unsurprisingly, the week after that, it will be Panda Time Walking with another heroic raid item reward, and this is just going to continue in order from Cataclysm to Pandaria to WoD to Legion, and then looping back to the Burning Crusade and Wrath. And that means it's an amazing time for 2 things. Number 1, to gear up your alt, because of course, 5 fast dungeons for a bit of heroic raid loot is pretty insane, but also for leveling. And that is because time walking dungeons are way faster than regular dungeons from 60 to 70. That's how I got my rogue up, super quick by the way. And with the heroic rewards up, you can expect to have some super fast queue times. It's not as fast as leveling at like super mega speedrunner, like top 10 percentile speedrunning through quests, but it is, you might be bored of that, and just seriously, it's really quick. And I mostly do love this news. I think it's a good example of Blizzard taking the safeties off, right? And actually trying whatever the hell they want to. Heroic gear at this point is a nice little bonus because, let's be real, the normal gear is useless for the vast majority of players at this stage, and doing it at this point in a patch, combined with 10.07, I think is pretty good. A lot of people are coming back to 10.07. There's new content to do. Maybe they want to try alts, especially a Ret Paladin, and this lets people prep for 10.1. So it kind of is a lot of birds dealt with, with one stone, especially when you think about how it is kind of thematically perfect, Dragon expansion, we've done some time travel, and now we have the timeways getting all turbulent. So I would say more of this, please, but, I do have to activate that cynical little goblin inside me to say that, think about it, right? The same could be said of any positive change, but there is a bit of a lick of desperation at this. There's a hint of, please come back before 10.1, please don't leave in the downtime, we really want you back, here's a patch, here's an event, go, 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 because by the end of this event, 10.1 will be very much on its way. And busting out the heroic gear and recycling that existing content faster than normal, that can be read into some people as really a few things. It could be a sign of weakness, indicating, they need to try hard to get people in. A bit like whenever promotional weekends and discounts are done fairly regularly, and for this expansion they have been. Maybe it's them trying to make the game appear more exciting when they don't otherwise have, content to keep everybody playing. So there are those things. Now, critical reception and us having fun is one thing, but Obviously, we do have to contend with a bit of reality, and that is that if retention isn't there after the scars that Shadowlands left, people at the top, my worry would be that the people at the top brass would be putting the pressure on. So I think that if the pressure's been put on, that this is a fairly player positive move to increase some of that, increase those numbers. And at the very least, it's them trying to do the right thing. And it's not like they're doing this in lieu of content, because, let's be real, 10.07, like with those new quests, they kind of slap. I'm hearing some people comparing them to even some FF14 content, which is the best thing to hear. So overall, I think it works out, especially with 10.1 coming. And I'm not really saying this to doomsay. I am just trying to see both sides of the equation and point out that obviously Blizzard is not in a position of undisputed strength. It's not like it's Legion where all the numbers have went back up, and that means they have to be a bit crafty. They have to be a bit scrappy. And I think that actually means they've got the hunger that they're really going to try as hard as they can to get people back in. And that does basically mean give us more reasons to play the game, which is probably what we want. Next then, the other bit of news, this has been blowing up. It's been a long time coming. I remember the start of this story with, I think it was called Arc something. It was the add-on that people were using on Professor Putricide in Wrath of the Lich King, where you could basically draw commands. It was crazy. But one of the longer running issues with World of Warcraft's raids has been add-ons, right? It's the, some would say abuse, some would say creative use, but Blizzard have developed a tool against it. Now, there's no need to worry, because this is not some horrific blanket approach that is Blizzard being fun police. Basically, the developers of Weak Auras have announced that Blizzard are developing a way where they can hide certain buffs and debuffs from add-ons, but that Blizzard are in talks with add-on developers to find ways to make sure the best part is still available, the customization. So the way that this will work, if it goes live, is that Blizzard are making things called private auras. So this means that add-ons will be able to show you these private auras, but they're not going to be able to get any specific information from those auras via the API. So the add-ons will not know any info, like stacks, like duration, or anything like that, so that the add-on can't make decisions for you. So it's going to be up to you to see it yourself and make the decision. So what does that actually mean? Well, the best example of this is when we lost the ability, big rip, to have custom-friendly nameplates in instances. All the way back in patch 7.2 of Legion, and that was because people used them to crazy results on Star Augur Atreus, right? Basically just marking players with custom overhead icons and then pointing them directly to where they needed to go, and it kind of broke mechanics. Back in WoD, there was also a real controversy where there was a radar to show you a line that you would basically form on Archimonde's Rot Chaos mechanic. And it's basically accepted that making and using that add-on and how their approach was specifically better than the other guilds, that basically gave Method the win over Paragon, who instead spent time developing a strategy that looked a bit more like Blizzard's actual intended solution. Preach's recent video on this topic has a few more examples of what add-ons could and could not do, of course from his high-end rating perspective, and what Blizzard has been doing over time to combat them, with the ultimate takeaway being that it's a constant war, because of course it is. The designers know how their fights are done by add-ons, in some ways. So going forward, if this works, it's actually good for everyone. Blizzard can make raid mechanics that add-ons can't help you with, without removing the actual good part of add-ons that we like. And in terms of design, this means that they can make actually more simple mechanics, because simple mechanics would be made absolutely obsolete by add-ons, right? So they can ensure that every player is on the same page, the same playing field, doing the same fight. That is awesome. I think that opens up possibilities for even better raids. I think there are times where designers will probably come up with a mechanic and think, yeah, but 80% of players are going to use weak auras, and that will ruin this mechanic, so we need to make it different. We need to make it less intuitive, or, you need a workaround that inherently is less intuitive, right? And this also shows that Blizzard are taking a smart, surgical approach to fixing a problem. Now, we don't yet know if this is going to be used in Aberrus in patch 10.1, but it's exciting to see the developers aim for not just the easy wins, but actually the challenging and controversial ones too. But that said, if we take today's void-like approach to seeing all possibilities, they might be worried about how much longer they can continue to make raids better and better. But, like above, this change, at least, is a good thing. And if they are willing to actually engage with the add-on devs to fix this long-standing issue, what won't they eventually do? Well, we know one thing. Apparently, they won't make tier deterministic. So, there's good, there's texture, and maybe a little bit of bad. This is where basically the good news is that Skarzard, a reward designer who is generally known as being very open and engaging with the community, which is something we love and encourage, has finally released part 1 of his promised retrospective on tier and raid loot in Season 1. And in it, he announced some upcoming changes. The changes are actually fine in isolation, though I think there's still a little bit of a controversy over who is being left out and how it's a bit of a messy solution, and it kind of highlights how sometimes Blizzard maybe fall back to some old habits and play it a bit boring and maybe a little bit defensive and out of fear. He basically describes what went wrong with tier sets in 9.2, including the raid being harder than they actually wanted it to be, personal loot making trade requirements insane, and players getting less vault slots than expected, which of course made the low drop chance of tier into a real problem. Tier wasn't fast enough, so they basically sped up tier acquisition in Dragonflight. They knew it would be controversial, but with the otherwise tier acquisition being faster, they actually decided to keep the 6 weeks delay for the catalyst because they wanted to see if the other changes they made actually helped. And these are changes like removing the trade restrictions, greatly increasing the rate of the vault dropping tier, and making raid vault slots a bit easier to fill. They actually did help, but not entirely. Based on their data, the most common bracket of players filled between 3 and 6 vault slots, and the vast majority of those, as a result, actually did have their 4-piece on or before that 6-week mark, and that had the knock-on effect of progressing and gearing faster, trading more, and generally having a better time. But it did leave out some players who don't raid, and instead solely do M+ or PvP. They had, on average, some pieces from the vault, but were, quote, extremely unlikely to get their 4 set before the catalyst. Basically, they think it was fine for most raiders, but for people who don't raid, yeah, they were at a disadvantage for weeks, which inspired Blizzard to make some changes. Though, the catalyst is still coming at week 6. So I know a lot of people won't be happy about that. But the first thing is that catalyst charges come weekly and they come for free, without having to do that little fill the bar quest. That means, like in 9.2, you can use 1 charge per character right away every week, and unlike in 9.2, there is no currency cost. The catalyst is literally 100% free, and it does mean that after week 10, you'll be able to instantly get tier on your alts with 0 catalyst-related work, as long as you obviously have gear to put into the catalyst, so I suppose that's good. Second then, there's a new achievement called Season 2 Master. Basically, if you clear the raid in Heroic, get 2200 Mythic Plus rating, or 1800 rating in PvP, you're going to get an item that is called the Mark of Mastery, and you can basically trade this at a vendor for any piece of tier at a Heroic level. You can do this once per character, and it will be available right away. Blizzard's main idea here is to make sure that people are guaranteed at least a bit of tier gear, but that they actually have to earn it. And for the hardcore players, they may actually be able to earn this in a few days or a week. But for a lot of other players, obviously, this will be something that they reach in, the few weeks before the catalyst unlocks, or maybe even quite a bit after the catalyst unlocks. And then the final thing is the last boss of the raid is always going to drop an extra bit of loot, which basically is an Omni token, a bit like the Mark of Mastery, but for the specific difficulty that it dropped from. And whoever gets that can just get a bit of tier. So basically, there is a guaranteed tier token from that final boss all the time. And they're also going to lower the tier set drop rate after the catalyst is out, because they basically found that what happens is, when the catalyst is out, the tier gear tokens kind of feel useless at that point, because you'll get them through the catalyst anyway, and then as a player, you're actually frustrated whenever tier drops, but you're actually hunting for weapons or a trinket instead. So I think that's kind of wise. There's actually a hell of a lot to break down in this one. One thing is that the Season 2 Master Achievement, to me, feels like an unnecessarily complicated solution. I mean, it's earning tier for what basically is achieving most players' actual seasonal goal for multiple months. That getting you a single bit of tier is kind of insane to me. It's obviously hyper-targeted at the Mythic community, right? Either people are doing the hardest Mythic keys, or maybe the Mythic Raiders. Most players will need tier to clear heroic level content fully in the first place. Two, then, is that while this does offer a solution for Mythic Plus and PvP players, it's a solution that is at the end of the path rather than at the middle, so it's actually not that helpful. Also, even if you get the mark early, the rest of tier being totally random does mean that you'll want to hold on to your mark until you get 3 pieces so that you do not risk getting a dupe. So ultimately, the issue here is that they want tier to feel random, exciting, and actually feel like a meaningful bit of progress, like a really exciting loot drop. But then they also want it to feel very strong and gameplay changing, so it's a very exciting reward. Basically, it kind of fights with the competitive nature in the game in many cases. If you're super unlucky with drops, then you maybe just feel very nerfed like crazy compared to the people who just happen to get lucky or average. I mean, I was lucky because I was the only person in my loot token slot, so I had tier almost instantly. And as much as I felt good about that, I'm sure it made a lot of my compatriots feel pretty bad, because while I was being just absolutely, rained on with tier, a lot of other people were pretty dry and they weren't getting it. So ultimately, this doesn't really solve the issue for most players. It acts as a tiny solve for the players who basically finish heroic content extremely quickly, like the top of the top of the top. And that is an important community for WoW, yes. But it is small in terms of numbers. And maybe their data shows that people don't care and actually do get excited by the random tier drops. Maybe people like my guild who take things slowly enough. The tier is important, but it's not a critical issue. Nobody's going to get benched. So maybe that bubble, it's a decent bit of variance, and maybe it can be exciting. But that said, it does constantly create frustrating gaps, even between our players, who get lucky in the vault or lucky in raid and those who don't. And I think WoW is generally a more pleasant experience for most players, with less elements feeling a bit casino-like. And it is tricky because, look, killing the dragon and getting 2 bits of loot out of its table, that is classic role-playing game, be that pen and paper or be that, an MMO thing. Tier itself is obviously great. The added gameplay is fun. The appearances are fun. We all love that stuff, but it does feel like Blizzard are going to be wrestling with this issue for a while, all because they're maybe a little bit scared of just making it a thing that you can go and earn. So depending on how this goes, I would perhaps like to see Season 3 experiment with tier maybe being earned on a track for a few weeks instead. Who knows? Something like the Season 4 dinars, or, reward 1 piece every few kills or every few hundred Mythic Plus or PvP rating. I don't know. But imagine if they framed it as a journey with multiple stops and rewards along the way. And, you have that promise of tier, both the upgraded gameplay and the shiny armor. And maybe that could be something that actually motivates people to get that next box down or get that next few hundred rating. So I suppose Blizzard have been really good at out-of-the-box thinking, being more gutsy about things. I love what Chimes has been saying about the new loot system coming in 10.1 with the upgrades. I think they've been doing this to great success, so I suppose I'm just going to offer some of my thoughts on this here. And I guess the most immediate easy fix is faster Catalyst, but that's clearly just not going to happen, as Ian pointed out in our interview, because they don't want it to be that, like, the second the Catalyst turns on, it's now the main source of tier. So ultimately, I think this is too careful a change from a Blizzard who we love to see make more radical changes. But who knows? Skarzard is a thoughtful person who actually listens to the community. The interaction has been great. The dialogue has been great. So perhaps part 2 of the Skarzard post will have some more interesting information or help us to understand some more things. So obviously, even though I do have some feedback that's perhaps against their plan, overall, this is a part of a very broad and positive picture. And that's basically it for today's news. Bloody interesting topics. And at the very least, if 10.1 is a banger of a patch, it is nice that this sort of double combo of 10.07 and Giga Time Walking Gearing, that perhaps that'll get some more players excited so that when 10.1 actually does drop, people feel nice and excited. Of course, as I'm recording this, it is Wednesday, and that means that 10.07 has just came out in my region, and I really want to do that Human Heritage Armor quest line because I've heard bloody good things about it. And of course, about the Orc one too. So, there you go. Of course, if you would like to use your downtime to play the game that we created, it's currently got a 91 in Steam, which I'm pretty chuffed about, then you can try out the narrative survival role-playing game, The Pale Beyond, that our team developed, and it's just over in Steam. The link should be down below. But anyway, that's it from me. Have a brilliant day. Check out this video next for some dope lore, and I'll see you next time.